And now for a very controversial, at least for me, a controversial episode of Steven Universe Future. It's episode 15 titled Mr. Universe, telling you exactly who's going to be involved in this episode of Steven Universe. And, oh boy, some things towards the end of this episode. But that's for later. Let's jump in, shall we? As we open up after the events of a couple of days ago. We find out this was like 2 days later after the events of last episode, where, Steven went to the doctor, he had all this pressure and just welling up and this, that, and the other, and Greg came home from the tour early just to kind of be there for Steven, because he's a good dad like that, but Steven's kind of down on himself because he's just like, I don't know what I want in life. That's kind of become the problem. I don't know what I want to do anymore. It was so simple before, but now, nothing is simple. And so Greg feels that maybe going out into the world is what's best for Steven, because he's only really spent his life in Beach City. Yes, he's gone out into the universe, as it were. He's been to Homeworld, this, that, and the other, but he hasn't just explored the world without any sort sense of agency. you know, he would always go out and then come back to his home in Beach City, and there that would be that. But he's never really just gone someplace to just go someplace. So they decide to set out, have a bit of a soul searching father and son bonding time. So they leave Beach City, just kind of hanging out, going out on the road, just living life for the most part, and they start to roll up close to one of Greg's old haunts, near where he played one of his first gigs. And, once Steven kind of questions, just like, so where did you actually become Mr. Universe? And Greg feels like, okay, I have an idea. I'll show you how I became Mr. Universe. So he rolls up to this random house and basically breaks and enters. He just climbs this tree, goes in through the window, and starts searching through this room. And Steven's kind of weirded out by this because it's just like, Dad, you're not a thief, man. What are you doing? What are you doing? You don't have to do this. You're rich. And he starts kind of exploring the house, looking to grab a pen and paper to like write them a note apologizing because deep down he's just a good kid like this. But then he finds some mail. Mail that is from Greg to the owners of this house, a Mr. and Mrs. DeMeo. And then he realizes through some photographs this is the home of his grandparents, the parents of Greg DeMeo, basically. So it's just like this shocking realization that this is the home of his grandparents, a place that he'd never explored, he never even really thought about. And Stephen is really kind of shocked. He's impressed. He's really taken in by all this. But Greg isn't interested in any of this. He left all this behind. It was a prison for him. He never talked about his past because he didn't care for his past. But Steven is all too thrilled with this. The whole idea of yearbooks and class photos, but you can see the misery in Greg's eyes through all of this. And ultimately, Greg does find what he was looking for. Steven takes a picture of Greg's middle school yearbook photo, but, Greg just wants to leave. He just wants to get out of there. And, he gives Steven the keys and says, hey, drive where you want to go. Just do it. Just drive to wherever you possibly want to be. And Greg is taking a lot of pride in this. It's just like, yeah, Steven, that's it. That's what I did. I just kind of got in the car and drove off and never looked back because, there was something that inspired me. My whole entire life, music was never a thing I was allowed to be involved with. But it was when one of his friends gave him an album by Carrie Moonbeam, which is an obvious parody of David Bowie, rest his soul, voiced by John Clement. who did Flight of the Conchords and a whole bunch of other stuff. A really great singer. If you've ever heard a very slightly British sounding voice, like he was that weird crab in Moana and the ethereal cloud in Rick and Morty, he's just had a lot of just fun parts here and there where he'll just show up and kind of sing. And that's his thing. And so they have him in this, and it's the inspiration for what made Greg Mr. Universe with a song called Mr. Universe. And it talks about, finding yourself, going out into the world. This is what inspired Greg to be a musician. This is what inspired him to go out and try to find himself. But while Greg is like really digging on this moment, feeling that it would be an inspiration to Steven kind of takes offense to all of this. That he just up and chose his name from some song and abandoned that entire life. Greg feels that it was a prison, that he had no choices, that he was never allowed to just be himself, that Steven would never have wanted that kind of a life. Steven gets angry, feeling that he was never allowed to make that choice. Maybe he wanted to be able to go to school and, eat meatloaf and live in a normal house with a normal family. And feeling that Greg is just pushing his own hardships and emotions on him, he gets angry at his feeling that Greg is no better than Rose Quartz, which, I have some words to say about that, but he ends up getting so angry, turning pink and ripping the steering wheel off of the van and totaling the van. Greg says that it can be salvaged. It's, oh man, seeing the van like that always makes me feel some kind of way. But whereas Steven feels like maybe Greg will be angry about the whole situation, Greg actually kind of like, I'm glad you stood up to me. I never had that kind of uh, willingness to stand up to my old man. And he just kind of starts droning on and on. But Steven kind of tunes him out, or just kind of disassociates in the moment, just staring at his phone, staring at the picture he had of when Greg was Greg DeMeo, and he just deletes the photo almost in frustration. It's something. He just feels some kind of way, and it's a hard thing because it's an example of looking at life through rose tinted glass. No, no. The grass is always greener on the other side. I think that's what I mean that's going. You look at someone else's life and you see the holes in your own life and you think, if only I could have had that. If only I had had all those things. But you're not seeing the downsides to that other side. Greg feels that Steven's life is so fantastical and perfect. He gets so many things that Greg would have always wanted in his life. But, he had no structure. And that's what Steven feels that he's lacking. The sense of normalcy, the sense of structure. Steven noted that he never even went to a doctor until a few days ago. And that's kind of been the major thing. Steven has been feeling like he's just been missing out on just being a person. It's that relationship to Connie that he feels that he's lacking. The relatability of just being a person, a normal person. Because the gem stuff is done. That's the downside. He's not off trying to save the world. He's not off trying to reestablish Homeworld. He's not doing any of that. All of that is done. He's pushed that all off. He's got little Homeworld set up. Everything is fine. Everything can run without him. But now it's just the realization, what do you want beyond being a crystal gem, saving corrupted gems, doing this, that, and the other. What do you want beyond that? You've done all of that. You've saved the universe from the gem tyranny. You've done all of this, but what now? You want to just live a normal life? Is that even possible for someone like you? You this half gem hybrid? who's never even been to a doctor, who knows nothing about, expectations from parents, who can't relate to normal kids? Is that even possible? Could that ever be possible? Are you willing to try? And that's kind of become the thing. It's just like Greg, don't get me wrong, Greg lacks in a lot of places. He just kind of goes with the flow in a lot of situations, and that's not always the best thing to do. But at the same time, well, yes, Steven ended up just growing up in a van, which is highly irresponsible. It was very different set of circumstances that even led to that. It's not like Greg had a home beforehand, and it's not like Rose had a home beforehand. It was only kind of after the fact that they built that house around the temple. There was a lot of playing things by ear because it was something that nobody could really expect or predict or know where it was going. Ultimately, Steven is kind of missing why Greg left because he sees so much of the things that he wanted in life, a normal family, all that good stuff. But Greg wasn't allowed to just be happy, do anything that made him happy. It was always do this, do that. You have no choice. You can only do this. You can only be this. He's saying he was never even allowed to listen or have anything related to music and until he was much older, around Steven's age. And that can sometimes be a burden. It's great to have parents who give you structure and purpose and help you out in life and are willing to do these things for you. But when they decide everything for you, how long your hair can grow, once you get past a certain age, you don't want that anymore. And while Steven has that freedom, he feels that he just there was something within what Greg had that he needs right now. I'm rambling on. I'm repeating myself in a lot of places, but honestly, it's hard to get the point across because honestly, I relate to this to a certain degree, at least to Greg's side of things, where I was raised in a very controlling environment. I was told, oh, you don't need to do this, you don't have to do that. We'll take care of everything for you. You just have to go to school, just go to school, just go to school. But the problem was, past a certain point, I kind of fell into what Steven is feeling. Like there was no direction after a certain point because I did everything that felt was asked of me, and up to a certain point, was just like, okay, now what? Now what? Now what? Now where do I go? You say just do this, you say just do that, but once that's done, where do I go from here? You lose your sense of self because we're raised in these rigid environments that either stifle people who can go beyond just going to school, and we stifle them and try to keep them in the box and say, no, you shouldn't do that, don't do that, that's stupid, don't do that, don't do that. But they can break out, they can become more than just that. Yeah, Greg's life wasn't the best, but because of went out on his own, he became a millionaire. It sucks that he couldn't find that out earlier in life, but there was a lot of money in what he did. But with Steven, he wants that rigid structure, and he kind of had that with the gems to a certain degree. But that he's reaching a point that I kind of reach, where it was just like, okay, now all of that other stuff has kind of been done. Now what? Where do you go from now? You just work for the rest of your life in a place that you don't feel really needs you? That you don't really care to be in? Nah, I don't know. It's an unfortunate situation, and there are no easy answers here. Hell, it's hard to tell if there are any answers here. Everybody could find their own solution to this situation, and you could find a million different solutions, and it would suit a million different people. There's no right answers here, and that's kind of the uncomfortable thing about this epilogue series to Steven Universe. There's no right answers here. There's no set direction, no place to go. That's the whole point. There is no set direction. There's no perfect direction for Steven, except the one that he chooses at the end of the day, except the one that you choose at the end of the day. Just don't stress about where you're going to go, but at the same time, just figure things out. Maybe go out into the world, experience life. Don't be afraid to ask people for help, though. You have friends, you have loved ones, and the worst thing you could ever do is just not talk to them. If they're not willing to listen, that's another story. But if they are willing to listen, if they are willing to give you advice when you're lost, give it a shot. What could it hurt? You know, is it really worth it just continuing to hurt yourself in the end? This series. This series got me feeling some kind of way. But hey, tell me your feelings in the comment section below. How did you feel about this entire episode? Do you have some kind of experience like this? Who do you relate more to, Greg or Steven? Who do you kind of side more with? Or do you find that both kind of have a interesting point of view about their whole upbringing? It really raises a lot of questions. But if you like this video, leave me a like. If you didn't, feel free to leave me a dislike. Subscribe and hit the bell icon. That way you never miss out on another Steven Universe future episode review. And until next time, I've been Duuz-Diz-Din, and I will see you later. Bye-bye.